The email arrived on a Tuesday morning, buried between bank notifications and a reminder that the electricity bill was due. It looked ordinary at first glance, the kind of message most people would delete without opening. The subject line read, "You're invited to celebrate our forever." He would have ignored it if not for the name. The bride's name was unmistakable. Same spelling, same middle initial, same last name she had taken when she married him. For several seconds, he simply stared at the screen, his coffee growing cold on the desk beside him. His office window overlooked a gray stretch of downtown Chicago, the kind of view that made every day look serious and important. Normally, that grounded him. That morning, it did nothing. He clicked the email. The invitation unfolded in soft pastel colors, elegant and expensive. A vineyard in Northern California. A Saturday afternoon ceremony, formal attire requested, reception to follow. Everything about it screamed carefully planned, lovingly curated, and proudly public. Except for one thing, he was still legally married to the bride. He leaned back in his chair slowly. The kind of movement a man makes when his body is trying to protect itself from what his mind has already understood. His first reaction was disbelief, not anger. The human brain often reaches for denial before it allows pain to enter. There had been signs, of course. There are always signs, but they rarely announce themselves clearly at the time. Her late nights, the unexplained trips, the gradual shift from warmth to polite distance, the way she started saying we need space instead of we'll figure it out. She had told him she needed time away to find herself. She said she was moving temporarily. That distance would help them breathe. She promised nothing had changed about her commitment to the marriage. She promised a lot of things. He had believed her because believing her was easier than imagining this. He scrolled down the invitation again, slower this time, forcing himself to absorb every detail. The groom's name was unfamiliar. A tech entrepreneur from San Jose, according to the brief bio attached to the wedding website. There were photos of them together, smiling, hiking, drinking wine, looking like a couple that had been together for years. She had built a whole second life while still tied to the first. He closed the email and sat there, motionless, as the noise of the city continued outside without any regard for what had just cracked open inside him. His phone buzzed with a text from a colleague asking about a meeting. He didn't respond. The normal world felt irrelevant now. Anger did not come immediately. Instead, there was a quiet heaviness, the kind that settles into the chest and makes breathing feel deliberate. He stood up and walked to the window, resting his forehead briefly against the cool glass. Most people imagine revenge as something loud and explosive, yelling, public confrontations, breaking things. But for him, the first emotion was clarity. If she was bold enough to marry another man while still married to him, then she believed he was either weak, unaware, or finished. She was wrong. He returned to his desk and opened a new tab. He didn't search her name. He didn't search the groom. He searched the venue. He studied the seating layout, the ceremony structure, the timing. He downloaded the schedule. He saved it all into a folder with a neutral name, the way professionals label things when they want to stay calm. He then opened another document. This one was far less decorative. It contained copies of their marriage certificate, tax filings, shared property records, messages where she referred to him as her husband months after she had supposedly moved on. Everything was dated. Everything was clean. Everything told one undeniable story. This was not a misunderstanding. This was not separation. This was deception. He did not call her. He did not text her. He did not warn her. Instead, he RSVP'd. He selected yes, will attend. No +1. No note, just attendance confirmed. Over the next few days, he behaved exactly as he always had. He went to work. He answered emails. He laughed at the appropriate moments. No one around him suspected anything was wrong, which was exactly how he wanted it. Silence, he had learned, made people careless. At night, however, he replayed memories with a new awareness. Moments that once felt insignificant now rearranged themselves into a clearer picture. Her sudden interest in California wines, the way she had asked, casually, if he ever wanted to live on the West Coast, the unfamiliar name that appeared once on her phone before she turned the screen away too quickly. He booked a flight to California for the morning of the wedding. One way, he booked a hotel nearby, not the one reserved for wedding guests. He rented a car that blended in, nothing flashy, nothing memorable. He chose a dark suit, tailored but conservative, the kind of outfit that wouldn't stand out in a room full of well-dressed strangers. He packed light. He did not bring emotion with him. He brought purpose. On the plane, he watched the clouds drift past the window and felt an unexpected calm settle over him. Not because he wasn't hurt, but because he finally understood the shape of the truth. Knowing the truth, even a painful one, gave him control. By the time the plane touched down, he was no longer reacting. He was acting. The vineyard looked exactly like the photos. Rolling green hills, white chairs arranged in neat rows, soft music drifting through the air as guests began to arrive. Laughter, champagne, celebration. He parked his car, adjusted his jacket, and stepped out into the sunlight. No one recognized him. That was the first advantage. He blended easily into the crowd, accepting a glass of champagne he didn't drink. nodding politely at conversations he didn't join. From his seat near the back, he could see everything clearly. The altar, the officiant, the groom waiting, smiling nervously. And finally, the bride showed up. She appeared radiant, confident, completely unaware that the past she thought she had buried was sitting quietly behind her, holding the truth in a thin folder, waiting patiently for the right moment. The music shifted gently as the bride reached the altar, and for a few seconds the entire world seemed to narrow into that carefully arranged space beneath the open sky. Guests leaned forward in their seats, phones discreetly lifted, eyes bright with expectation. This was a moment everyone had come for, the emotional center of the day, the part that would later be clipped into highlight reels and shared with captions about love and destiny. From the back row, he watched her face with the attention of someone reading a familiar book for the last time, noticing details he had once overlooked. The way her smile curved slightly higher on the left, the practiced calm in her eyes, the confidence of a woman who believed every loose end had been tied. She did not look nervous. She looked victorious. The officiant began to speak, his voice smooth and reassuring, practiced in the art of turning routine words into something that sounded sacred. He talked about commitment, about honesty, about choosing one person above all others. Each sentence landed like a quiet irony that only one person in the audience fully understood. He shifted slightly in his seat, crossing one leg over the other, careful not to draw attention. Around him, strangers dabbed at their eyes. A woman whispered, "She's glowing," to her partner. Someone else murmured about how perfect everything looked. Perfect things, he knew, were often the most fragile. The bride laughed softly at something the officiant said, then turned to look at the groom. It was a natural movement, effortless, rehearsed by love, or at least by habit. But as she turned back toward the guests, her gaze drifted outward, scanning the crowd in the absent way people do when they feel safe. That was when her eyes reached the back row. At first, her expression did not change. The human mind resists shock. It tries to protect itself by assuming familiarity is coincidence. A man who looked like him, perhaps a similar build, a similar posture, then recognition arrived. It was not dramatic, it was not loud, it was devastatingly subtle. Her smile froze, mid-breath, her shoulders stiffened, just enough to be noticeable to someone who had shared a bed with her for years. Her eyes widened, not in fear, but in calculation, as if her brain was desperately searching for an explanation that would make what she was seeing impossible. But he did not look away. He met her stare calmly, evenly, with no anger in his face, no accusation, no visible emotion at all. He simply existed, solid and undeniable, in a place where she had believed he would never be. For a long second, time stretched thin. She swallowed. Her lips parted slightly, then closed again. The groom, unaware of the shift, reached for her hand, smiling proudly. She let him hold it, but her fingers were cold now, her grip automatic. The officiant continued speaking, unaware that the emotional center of the ceremony had cracked open. From the outside, it looked like nothing had changed. From the inside, everything had. She tried not to react. She forced her smile back into place, but it was tighter now, brittle. She avoided looking at the back row again, fixing her eyes instead on the officiant, then the groom, then anywhere that wasn't him. He noticed all of it. He noticed the way her breathing changed. He noticed the way her posture shifted from confidence to defense. He noticed how her joy evaporated into something sharper, more urgent. She was doing math in her head, calculating damage, asking herself impossible questions. How was he here? Who told him? What did he know? What would he do? That was the second advantage. She was unraveling silently, and no one else knew why. As the officiant asked the guests to rise, she hesitated for half a second before turning fully toward the crowd. Her eyes avoided the back row entirely now, as if not seeing him could undo his presence. But he stood when everyone else did, tall and still, unremarkable to anyone who didn't know him. The officiant invited anyone with a reason the couple should not be joined in marriage to speak now or forever hold their peace. It was delivered lightly, almost playfully, the way it always is, because no one ever expects an answer. A soft chuckle rippled through the guests. He did not move, not yet. The groom glanced at the crowd with a relaxed smile, confident, secure in the belief that his life was about to begin exactly as planned. The bride swallowed again, her jaw tightening, her mind screaming for the ceremony to move forward faster. She wanted the words spoken quickly. She wanted the vows said. She wanted the legal finality that would turn this moment into something irreversible before the past could catch up. But ceremonies have a rhythm, and that rhythm cannot be rushed without drawing attention. As the officiant transitioned into the personal story of how the couple met, she risked another glance toward the back row, just to confirm that what she had seen was real. He had moved one seat closer to the aisle, not enough to be obvious, enough to be intentional. Her heart dropped into her stomach. This was no coincidence. This was no misunderstanding. He was not lost. He was not confused. He was exactly where he meant to be. The officiant invited the groom to share his vows first. The groom took a breath, unfolded a piece of paper, and began speaking about love, trust, and the miracle of finding someone who felt like home. The words echoed across the vineyard, sincere and hopeful, and with every sentence, her panic deepened. Because she knew something he did not. She knew that trust was about to be redefined in front of everyone he loved. She tightened her grip on the bouquet, knuckles whitening, her smile now entirely performative. She nodded at the right moments, laughed softly when expected. But her attention was no longer on the man in front of her. It was on the man behind her. When it was her turn to speak, she hesitated just long enough for the officiant to tilt his head slightly in concern. She smiled again, nodded, and began reading vows she had written weeks earlier. Words about honesty that now tasted bitter in her mouth. Halfway through, her voice faltered. Not enough for the guests to panic. Enough for him to know she was close to breaking. He reached into the inside pocket of his jacket and felt the familiar edge of the folder. He did not pull it out yet. He did not stand. He did not interrupt. He waited. Because the twist was not that he had come. The twist was that he was not there to stop the wedding. He was there to finish it. The officiant smiled warmly as the bride finished her vows, clearly relieved that her voice had steadied by the end. Applause followed, gentle and approving, the kind that rises naturally when people believe they are witnessing something sincere. A breeze moved through the vineyard, rustling leaves, lifting the edges of dresses and suit jackets, as if nature itself was participating in the celebration. From the outside, it was still a wedding. From the inside, it was a carefully balanced lie. The officiant raised his hands slightly, signaling for quiet. His tone shifted into something ceremonial, something final. He spoke about the binding nature of marriage, about how words spoken here would carry legal and moral weight long after the chairs were folded and the guests returned home. Then he arrived again at the familiar line, the one most people never truly listen to. If anyone here has a lawful reason why these two should not be joined in marriage, speak now or forever. Hold your peace. There was a pause. Not the dramatic kind, just a polite, practiced pause, the kind that exists only because tradition demands it. He stood. The sound of his chair folding back against the gravel was soft, but in the sudden silence it landed like a dropped glass. A few heads turned instinctively. Most people assumed he was heading for the restroom or responding to a phone vibrating in his pocket. The bride did not move. Her spine went rigid. Her breath caught halfway in. She knew exactly what was happening now, and for the first time that day, fear broke fully through her control. He stepped into the aisle calmly, his movements unhurried, respectful, almost formal. The officiant frowned slightly, uncertain but polite, unsure whether this was a mistake or a misunderstanding. The groom tilted his head, confused, his smile fading into curiosity. "I'm sorry," the officiant said gently. "Sir, is everything all right?" "Yes," he replied evenly. His voice carried easily without effort. "I believe so." Every eye in the vineyard was on him now. Phones lifted openly. Whispers began to ripple outward, the soft sound of speculation spreading faster than clarity ever does. The bride finally turned, fully toward him. Up close, the shock on her face was impossible to hide. Her carefully composed expression fractured into disbelief, then into something rawer, something closer to desperation. Her lips parted, as if to speak, to stop him, to say his name. But no sound came out. The groom followed her gaze, his confusion deepening as he looked between them. "Do you know each other?" he asked, half laughing, still assuming this was some awkward coincidence. He did not answer immediately. Instead, he reached into his jacket and removed the folder. It was slim, ordinary, unremarkable. That detail mattered more than anyone realized. He walked the remaining distance to the front and stopped a respectful few feet away from the officiant, careful not to step onto the ceremonial space. His posture was straight. His expression was neutral. There was no anger in his eyes, no satisfaction, only certainty. "I have a lawful reason," he said calmly, holding up the folder just enough for the officiant to see it, and documentation to support it. The officiant's expression shifted. This was no longer a harmless interruption. This was something else entirely. He glanced at the bride, then at the groom, then back at the man standing before him. "Sir," the officiant said slowly, "this is a serious moment." "Are you claiming I am claiming," he interrupted gently, without raising his voice, "that the bride is already legally married?" The words landed heavily, like a weight dropped into water. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Someone laughed nervously, then stopped when no one else joined in. A woman near the front whispered, "What?" under her breath. The groom's face drained of color as he turned fully toward the bride. "What is he talking about?" the groom asked, his voice sharp now, edged with confusion and disbelief. "Is this some kind of joke?" The bride shook her head quickly, too quickly. "No," she said, the word coming out strained. This is not what it looks like." He opened the folder and removed the first document. "I can assure you," he said evenly, "this is exactly what it looks like." He handed the officiant a copy of the marriage certificate. The officiant took it automatically, his brows knitting together as he scanned the page. His professional calm wavered. The groom stepped closer, trying to see. "What does that say?" he demanded. The bride reached for the officiant, her voice trembling now. "Please, this is private. We can talk about this later." "There is no later," the officiant said quietly, still reading. He looked up at her, concern and gravity replacing ceremony entirely. "This certificate appears valid." The groom stared at the document, then at the man standing before him. "Who are you?" he asked, his voice low. He met the groom's eyes for the first time. "My name is on that certificate," he said. "I am her husband." Silence fell hard and complete. The bride's knees seemed to weaken. She reached for the groom's arm, but he pulled back instinctively. Shock, turning into something darker. Hurt, betrayal, realization. "You told me you were divorced," he said slowly, every word heavy. "You showed me papers." She opened her mouth, then closed it. Whatever story she had prepared for this moment was clearly not strong enough to survive it. He did not gloat. He did not argue. He simply continued. "We have not filed for divorce," he said. "We are still legally married. We share assets, tax filings, and a documented history that extends into this year." He handed over another document, then another. Each page stripped another layer from the illusion she had built so carefully. The officiant's hands trembled slightly now as he sorted through them. His role as ceremonial guide replaced by the weight of legal reality. "I cannot proceed," the officiant said finally, his voice firm. "This ceremony cannot continue under these circumstances." The groom took a step back from the bride, shaking his head. "Is this true?" he asked her again, his voice breaking now. "Tell me this isn't true." She looked at him, tears welling up, mascara beginning to smudge despite the hours of preparation. "I was going to tell you," she said weakly. "I just needed time." Time. The word hung in the air, hollow and useless. He closed the folder and held it against his chest, his role complete. He did not need to say anything else. The truth was doing the work for him now. Guests began to murmur openly. Some stood, others looked away, embarrassed to witness something so intimate unravel so publicly. Phones were no longer discreet. The bride's perfect day had collapsed, not with shouting or chaos, but with paperwork and patience. And as the officiant stepped back, the vineyard no longer felt like a place of celebration. It felt like a courtroom without walls. Scene 4. The silence that followed did not break quickly. It thickened, stretching across the vineyard like fog, heavy and uncomfortable, settling into every space where music and laughter had been moments before. The officiant stepped aside fully now, no longer a conductor of vows but a witness to collapse. His hands folded in front of him, his expression firm with responsibility, as if anchoring himself to the reality that this ceremony was over. The groom looked around slowly, as though expecting someone to explain how the world had tilted so violently off its axis. Guests avoided his eyes. Some stared at the ground. Others stared openly at the bride, curiosity overpowering politeness. A few whispered urgently, already constructing their own versions of the story. The bride stood frozen at the center of it all. Her bouquet slipped from her fingers and landed softly against the grass, white petals bruising on contact. That small sound, barely audible, somehow felt louder than anything else. It was the sound of a plan failing completely. She looked at her husband then, not the groom, the man she had married first, the man she had assumed was too far away, too quiet, too finished to matter anymore. Her face twisted with panic. "Why would you do this here?" she whispered, her voice cracking, desperation stripping away any remaining pretense. "You could have called me. You could have handled this privately." He regarded her calmly, the way one looks at a door already closed. "I did," he said simply. "You didn't answer." That was the only defense he offered. The groom exhaled sharply, running a hand through his hair. "So this whole thing," he said, gesturing vaguely at the altar, "the guests, the decorations, was a lie." She reached for him again, but he stepped back, shaking his head, the realization hardening into something final. "Don't," he said, "just don't." He turned to the "What happens now?" The officiant cleared his throat. "Legally, nothing proceeds today. Any attempt to continue would be invalid." "I'm very sorry." The groom nodded slowly, absorbing the words, then looked at the man who had ended his wedding without raising his voice. "Did you know about me?" he asked him quietly. He paused before answering, not out of hesitation, but out of respect. "I suspected," he said. "I didn't come here for you." That answer landed cleanly. No accusation, no insult, just truth. The groom swallowed and gave a short, humorless laugh. "Well," he said, "congratulations, I guess." He turned and walked away from the altar without another word, past the rows of stunned guests, past the cameras still recording, past the life he thought was beginning. A few people followed him instinctively, unsure whether to console him or simply escape the scene. The bride watched him go, her face collapsing completely now. The stories she had built required both men to remain silent. One had spoken, the other had left. She was alone. She turned back to her husband, tears streaming freely now, her voice rising. "What do you want from me?" she asked. "Money, revenge. Is this about humiliating me?" He looked at her for a long moment, taking in the disarray, the dress, the ruined makeup, the guests who would never forget this day. "This," he said quietly, gesturing around them, "was your choice. He reached into his jacket one final time and removed a single envelope. Unlike the folder, this one was sealed. He handed it to her. "What's this?" she asked, her hand shaking as she took it. "Divorce papers," he said, "filed this morning, along with a petition citing fraud and misrepresentation." Her breath hitched. "You can't do that without talking to me." "I did," he replied calmly. "You didn't answer." She stared at the envelope as if it might disappear if she didn't look too closely. "You planned this," she said, voice hollow. "You planned everything." He nodded once, not proudly, not apologetically. Yes. Around them, the wedding staff began quietly dismantling the scene. Chairs were folded, flowers were lifted, the illusion was being erased piece by piece. Guests drifted away in clusters, already messaging friends, already turning this moment into a story they would tell for years. The bride looked up at him again, eyes red, voice barely above a whisper. "You ruined my life." He met her gaze steadily. "No," he said, "I stopped pretending it was mine." He turned then, adjusting his jacket, his movements unhurried. No one stopped him as he walked back down the aisle, the same path she had taken only an hour earlier, believing she was walking toward a future built on a lie. Outside the vineyard, the afternoon sun was still warm. The hills were still green. The world had not ended. He got into his car and closed the door, sealing the silence inside. For a moment, he sat there, hands resting on the steering wheel, allowing himself a single deep breath. Not of relief, not of victory, but of closure. He drove away without looking back. Behind him, the wedding was already becoming something else entirely. A rumor, a warning, a moment frozen in the memory of everyone who witnessed it. And for the bride, it would always be the day her secret wedding became the place where her past stood up, spoke calmly, and walked away with everything that mattered.